since Annie can also ready those 2 runes at the end of turn and potentially protect that sneaky deckhand.
Yeah, though I don't see 2 runes ready, and I do not see any spells.
So they started a little bit early actually. So we're gonna go over to the game now, so you can see what it is we're talking about. I think right now where we're paused is the sneaky deckhand has conquered the Zon Warrens,
Yes.
and a scrap heap has been discarded for that. I believe based on the number of cards we got, it looks like that may have been his turn, and this should now be on Silent's turn, I believe, as he's now got 4 runes. And the Annie has ready there too. Got it. Okay, so we're in here now. We're gonna go in. We're gonna make a gold token, and it's gonna be a tie ball game to start.
Yeah, this card right here is one of the biggest differences between Annie and Draven, and not all the Annie decks are playing this. Treasure Hunter, one of the best new Chaos cards, especially in tandem with the Reaver's Row. And this card in general has changed things up quite a bit. Not only does it allow these purple decks to play a lot more gold, a lot more power costs than you had before, like the rebukes and such, which were traditionally side decks, and now you can just afford the main deck them. But it also changes up the battlefield meta. Like you'll notice Kaisen no longer plays Reavers because playing Reavers when your opponent is playing Chaos is just inting, right?
So here we go. The Annie play here is gonna force the issue though into the Reaver's row. So we're gonna move back that Treasure Hunter, get another gold gear token. So very similar to how Traveling Merchant would get some value that way that we saw. But Draven's also got a pair of overzealous fans that he developed into his base. So we're going to have a little bit of a Reaver's Row dance back and forth here. But 3 points already for Annie.
I mean, it's a strong start from Annie, but you kind of expect this. Annie is a little bit more of an explosive deck, choosing to play sneaky deckhands and such, where Draven does play a little bit slower, though generally the Draven leader is getting generally does get more value than the Annie leader. But obviously, when you do start strong like this and you do see your scrap heaps on Warren's combo, not so much of an issue. Though it does look like we are blood rushing, and we're going to start going on the aggression here for Draven. Would like to see some cards off that Draven leader.
So we're going to start going by the Zon Warrens first, so we can maybe potentially force the issue here before going to the Reaver's Row, which may be a little trickier to work with since it'll be a 4 versus 4 power there. But we are going to go ahead and conquer the Zon Warrens. We're going to get a discard and a draw here for Silent.
Yeah, choosing the draw at the Draven leader first, which obviously you get to see more cards then, more options. Now, does he choose to push up onto the Reavers as well? I imagine you would. You don't want Annie to stick around here. Yeah, at least threatening another cleave, another blood rush, say. Um,
So
but
the
I
very first thing
imagine,
that's going to happen is going to be the Reaver's Row trigger. So we'll see
yes,
what
of
ends up
course.
happening there. If Kaju decides to stick there, Annie now with set 2, just a significant more array of potential cards you could see from 2 or 3 runes. So this could be a fight or flight. This could be we even saw in the last game. I'm losing the name of the card now, but we're just going to decide to just move her back with the Reaver's Row. So we're going to tie things back up. Silent Knight's got 3 points here, and still 4 cards in hand. 4 runes could choose to. Oh no, actually, we just went ahead. We're going back to the Reaper's Row play here. Okay, it looks like we're going to potentially think about what's happening here first. So uh,
Not
the
sure what the players are.
okay, so we have a stack deck at action speed. Okay, that makes sense. Have to play that during a showdown or your own turn. So if you do that before moving back the Reaver's Row, there's no longer a showdown. There's no longer any window for Kaji to play that stack deck. So it looks like we're going to go ahead, get that stack deck off. Now we're going to
What?
move back to the Reaver's Row.
That cannot happen. Um, I'm very confused what just happened because so you cannot play actions in response to the attacking defending triggers. So there was no Okay, so he's gonna retreat the Reavers. That resolves, and then he's going to use the stack deck. So the players just did it in a bit of a weird order, but
Yeah.
the Reavers should have resolved before the stack deck happened. So,
Treasure
but
Hunter doing some more movements. We've got 3 gold now.
yeah, and this is where Draven does want to be on both of the battlefields, has the overzealous fans. The only thing you don't really want here is it does kind of stink to not have any runes up, as you're not really threatening anything. Annie does have her own fighter flights, has her own rebukes, has her own void seekers, ways to remove these fans. But I mean, double hidden is a little bit threatening. You can generally tell the hiddens in the Draven deck are fighter flights or like switcheroos. They don't really, unless I'm forgetting one, they don't really play too much other than that.
I think those are all the hiddens that you really are likely to see. Not really a lot of room for the other ones. You know, cards like Ride the Wind or Rebuke. None of those are hidden. So that kind of sort of rounds out most of the spell suite from Draven. But this is a pretty formidable spot to be in, uh, having 2 units at both of these bases and are each being protected by a hidden card. So it's going to be interesting to see what Kaju decides to go with here. You cannot move both of your units back with Reaver's Row. So if we do decide to try to take some action over there, we are guaranteed at least some sort of combat. But it's going to be the Zon Warrens going in, and we'll see if we will have focus play from Kaju or if he's going to pass priority back.
I would expect a overzealous fan trigger here. I'm kind of curious I would like to know what step they are in, but yeah, so overzealous fan is triggered into the Kaisa. This is going to trigger the Draven leader, the draw.
Yep.
And
going to be winning another combat there. So that's kind of the difference between Annie and Draven here, is you get those resources from Draven in the form of drawing cards, and Annie's really about that, being able to utilize the cards she's already got, but more runes up each turn.
Okay. It's interesting. Both players choosing the fight or flight. Then, quite obviously, Draven does not win the combat, missing out on both a draw and a gold token there. It's still 4 up for Annie. Could see like a Ride the Wind. Oh, nope.
Yeah, and
did he just draw?
Yeah. Why did he just draw?
Not super sure why a draw happened.
Yeah, I think it is still the Annie's turn. Here comes a sneaky deckhand. We're going to come into Zon Warrens. That one for sure is going to conquer and have a discard and a draw again. See if Annie's working with any more scrap heaps or if we're just going to cycle through one card. So you can see already with the strategies of both decks as well, with what their plans are based on the battlefields. That Reaver's Row game 1, Draven really just wants to be utilizing being able to move a lot with like those cards like Treasure Hunter, and more on the Annie side, trying to make a really big discard pile for a big Vi Ride the Wind play.
Yeah, though with Annie in this matchup, you can't actually really rely on the Vi Ride the Wind, and it can't be something you lean on. Come late game, as the Draven does have Rebuke, he has the Switcheroo. There actually are quite a few pieces that stop this from happening. The Rebuke, the Switcheroo, the Fight or Flight, like a lot of different cards that will stop it. So you do have to actually make sure you're respecting these options. And it would be nicer to be able to put yourself in a winning position before that, because the Draven deck does prefer the play on the offense, but so does the Annie deck. So it's kind of who's going to take the wheel. I will say the Draven deck has more options in this more of a mid-rangey style that we kind of have found ourselves in this game, right? Like it's no longer mindless aggro. Each player is scoring maybe 1 point a turn, rather than I'm double conquering, I'm holding, I'm double conquering, etc.
Yeah, I think as the game has sort of progressed here in NAEU, folks have started to realize that trying to hold isn't always the best strategy, even if you are really aggressive. Just being the attacker gives you so many more options. But when you're controlling both battlefields the way that Silent is able to right now, it does just make it significantly more difficult for Kaju to deal with both battlefields. Look, we've got 6 cards in hand. We've got 8 runes. We've still got that hidden card that's hanging there. So just a lot on the board that Kaju has to consider next turn.
And when Annie is paid a fair bit of power here, it gets a little bit annoying because you do have to find ways to clear the battlefields while actually dealing with like the hiddens and the overzealous fans. You can't just play Darius plus like a stack deck or a cleave, because you still have to respect the fighter flights, you have to respect the overzealous fans. There are a lot of cards that actually make it not really straightforward for Annie to take the battlefields against Draven. Whereas Draven doesn't care quite as much about Annie holding, because Annie doesn't really want to hold in the first place. It's part of the reason that Annie deck does play the flash, is you just say, okay, I'm going to get the point lead, and then I'm going to just save my units every single turn, push them back up, reconquer. But Draven does have tools to hold, which is a bit annoying for the Annie deck, especially if the Annie deck is not playing some of these cards like Falling Star that traditionally some of the Annie decks did play in set 1. I don't know if there is a Falling Star in Kaju's deck. It is an option. I mean, Void Seekers still are pretty expected, but we haven't seen any removal spells yet. Guess we'll have to see.
So Draven's going to activate his ability with one of the gold tokens that we had that was ready. So he's going to go up to 6. Once that resolves, priority comes back to Kaju. Going to use a cleave, getting our Kaisa attacking up to a 7. So the ball is now kind of in Silent Knight's court to decide if he's okay with this, what he may want to use for resources to potentially, because again, with both players with the fighter flights, ride the winds, there's a lot of tricks that can happen here, and you really want to make sure that you're navigating things properly so that you don't get, completely blown out by a potential play here. So I believe that was the fighter flight that
Ride
played
the
it.
wind.
Or we Oh, there's Ride the Wind. Okay, I see there. Who's is it? Who's Ride the Wind?
It
I
should
just don't see it.
be
I don't see it on the
Silence
board.
here. I'm not sure what he is choosing to move yet.
Okay,
Still
I do see it.
deciding.
It does say that he did play it. Okay, so I think we're just deciding what
No.
the plan could be here.
Yeah, the ball is in Kaju's court here, as in this position, Silent has a better board, has more runes to work with. Well, not anymore, but he did have more runes to work with all the treasure tokens. Still has that hidden. It is in Kaju to actually deal with this, but it looks like the Ride the Wind is still not resolved. I don't know what was targeted.
Yeah, so it does seem to be the point we're at right now. There might be some communication between the players. Okay, so it looks like Ride the Wind will go to the discard, and that's going to move Draven over to the Reaver's Row. So no harm, no foul there for the combat. For Silent, he gets to keep control of the Reaver's Row. We'll get a conquer, draw, plus a draw, and discard and draw from the Zon Warrens. So we'll see. Kaju's going to get a chance here to dig a little bit to see what he might be able to find. But right now, that Reaver's Row is being, they're holding it down in the underground over there.
Yeah. Kaju will see a bunch of cards here. It's pretty hard to push off Draven on this turn, as even with like a Ride the Wind, you do have to deal with the hidden plus the Draven, as the Draven is going to gain the 2 might for the rest of the turn. And then if it does get another defending trigger, it'll go up another 2, which is quite annoying.
Not to
Plus the
mention the
overzealous fan,
overzealousness.
plus
Yep,
the hidden.
exactly. Yep. So walking on eggshells here, anywhere near Reaver's Row right now, there could be any. It's kind of just like, what's in the box, right? So I think right now Kaju's trying to determine what is even a potential option based on what is on board, and then there's also just 2 more runes and 4 more cards in Silent's hand. So this is an absolute uh, landmine situation here where there's probably not going to be a lot of great plays, but you kind of have to do something to start to force the issue, because if you start taking kind of these, too safe, passive kind of plays, then I think you're going to fall behind a little too quickly. There's just so much more on board for Silent right now. So it looks like we're going to see a Kaisa initially starting in the base. We'll see if there's going to be an accelerate option here.
Can't imagine he accelerates. There aren't really any options for him to take the point. Yeah. It's pretty rough here for Kaju, as Silent Knight is now on the even points and I mean, it's pretty realistic that he does hold this point and could opt to just choose the hold to 7, conquer the 8. I would say generally these aggressive decks don't like to hold to 8. You'd prefer to just pull everything back and then go for a big push, go 7-8. But I mean, that battlefield's looking pretty tough to break with the any board. Still 5 cards in the Draven hand, so you could still have like rebukes, fighter flights, just answers to even like the Vi Ride the Wind. So clearing that board is going to be pretty rough. I guess because it's Reavers, he's probably fine in saying, hey, I'm going to hold this, and if you use your runes to try and stop me from holding it, I can just retreat my units and say, okay, this is fine, I'm still going to push to 8.
So starting off with using that Draven's ability to gain, uses one of the gold, pushes up to a 6. So we've got a 6 versus 4 battle going here. So Kaju here has to make some sort of move. Otherwise, just losing your Kaisa here just to this Conquer is pretty much disaster. I think we pretty much need to see some sort of action taken for Kaju for him to have a chance here, because with such little going on the battlefield right now and being behind in points, you're really going to need to start taking advantage of some of those cards that you've got in hand at this point, and hopefully they're not all just, more traveling merchants.
I'm kind of curious what made Knight opt to try and even push up this turn. I feel like I don't really want to push up and hold my units, though I guess he is making the call that Annie isn't really playing any of these cards that could remove his unit, such as like the Void Seekers or something that's actually going to remove and not just push it back like a Fighter Flight or something. Because I really don't want to lose my Draven here. Okay, yeah, so there is an option right there to make the Draven die. Let's see, what does he have? I mean, still 9 up. Like Cleaves, Blood Rushes, Spinning Axes, Long Swords.
Also a number of potential accelerate options that could come out here too. So it could just be Draven taking out one of the Kaisas. But no, here we come seeing the thematic, lore accurate Spinning Axe. Quick draw, reaction speed equipment that we see coming in. And this is going to give Draven another +3, which has now once again brought the power total into Silent's favor, and is going to require another spell of some kind from Kaju to not just lose both of his Kaisas here.
Yeah, it's pretty rough here for Kaju. Could still have like a Rebuke or a Fighter Flight, but if it does get to that point, now you have both of your Kaisas on the Warrens, right? And you have to somehow get them over to the Reavers. Otherwise, you are just losing the game to the hold plus push up of the Draven. I mean, in the tank here, this is the make it moment. Combat might decide the game. Okay, see, there is the Void Seeker.
Oh, and here we come. One of everyone's favorite new cards from the set. Chaos getting a lot of great tools, and this one is Hard Bargain. What driving a real hard bargain here. Since there's no more runes left for Kaju, cannot pay that too. So just the single doesn't even need to repeat the hard bargain, and that's going to counter the Void Seeker straight up. There goes the Kaisas. There's the Conquer, up to 7 points, and NA, I think it might be all over but the crying.
Yep, this is looking like game on board, but can never count the players out. Could have some 4-card combo here, Vi Ride the Wind, Rebuke, Falling Star, something. Technically, it could happen. I mean, there is a chance.
It would need to be a lot. It would need to be a lot. So Kaju's going to take a look here. I think we're either gonna start to try to assemble Voltron here and maybe not lose, or we may see a quick concession depending. But another hidden card joins Draven on the Zon Warns. So, I mean, as far as I've seen with Draven decks go, I think Silent pretty much had all the tools that he needed to do. He had early aggression in multiple 2 drops to be able to pressure those battlefields, and Kaju said he's seen enough. Things like that are less painful for a deck like Draven than compared to Annie.
Yeah, Chaos does get to cheat a lot of the power costs with these new cards. Treasure Hunter being the big one. I mean, that card, I've seen Draven games where that card is generated like like 5 gold tokens, and I just go, this is just not fair, is it?
Just playing the game too, not really doing anything completely out of the normal.
Hmm.
But it's going to be on the play Arena's Greatest for Kaju. So both players going to be starting at 1 point, and I believe that's Targon's Peak. Is this Draven trying to do a little bit of an Annie impression here on game 2, trying to even the playing field?
Did Kaju miss his own Arena's Greatest?
It would
Oh.
appear.
Oh no, you never love to see that.
That's a bit of a disaster. But that's a Rengar that we've got in base, by the way. Not a card that we've seen a whole lot of so far today. I think some lists here and there have had maybe 1 or 2 that they're looking at, but that's a reaction speed unit with Assault 2, and can be played to a battlefield that you are attacking. So talking about cards that really just can mess up the math on you, but playing them straight up here is just a normal attacking unit. Gonna get in there to the Targon's Peak to trigger that to be able to ready 2 runes and try to stay in pace with the amount of cards that you can play compared to the Annie. How do you like Targon's in Draven?
Yeah. I don't hate it. There are a few different versions of Draven, and there is a couple versions that are really only play aggressive spells, like a lot of cleaves, a lot of blood rushes. Not really too many runes you can use on the defense. And then there are versions like what we're seeing from Silent here that do play cards that can be used in reaction to them attacking you. Like we saw the Spinning Axe, we saw Fighter Flights, we saw Longsword, like a lot of different cards. So I actually think it's pretty good. It lets Draven kind of become Annie, right? It says, yes. I am you now, but better.
Look what they must do to gain an inch of our power.
Pretty much.
I'm probably blowing the reference there, but yeah, there's certainly no shortage of cards that Draven has that cost 2 as well, and certainly going to be doing a lot of conquering. But for now, Draven just going to be fine with having Rengar and Draven in base. This is going to allow the Kaisa now to conquer the Targon's Peak. So now we're going off here, NA. We're going to be readying 4 runes at the end of this turn. So this might be a bit of a green light here. Oh, and a little bit more just to add to. Here comes the Darius. Since we played the stack deck first, he enters ready. And here he comes into the Arena's Greatest. It does look like we had the friendly, okay, you got the Arena's Greatest point here. So going up to 3, readying 4 runes into the next turn. So the Annie player looking a little dangerous.
He did not get the Arena's Greatest point because he's conquered with Overzealous, and then he conquered with Kaisa Darius.
Got it. Okay.
Overzealous fan, unfortunately, despite being Draven's biggest fan, fighting against him here a little bit.
Yeah, sometimes those fans can get a little they can get a little crazy. So Draven, no stranger to that. So in talking about the Arena's Greatest, the Arena's Greatest isn't really a place so much, I feel like, as these other places. If you said who's the Arena's Greatest, I think it's Draven.
Yeah, again, things fighting against yourself, right? Like you got Annie's like, no, I'm the best, but you're against Draven, and as we're all aware, Draven is the best.
So here comes a repeated Blood Rush. So similar card to Cleave from the first set. However, it's got a little bit of extra action on there if you do have the energy to work with. So we're going to go ahead and split it out between both. So Rengar is going to have Assault 2 plus Assault 2. So that's going to get him all the way up to an 8 spot into the Darius here. And this is going to be scary for the Annie player to deal with. Certainly fight or flights, or maybe even Rebuke could be in the work. You don't really want to Rebuke a Rengar, though, because that reaction speed is in there. But I think that is a card. Okay, actually, we're just going to go ahead and let it happen. Rengar, a little too big. Going to win that combat, drawing the card from the Draven Legend. And still forcing yet another potential favorable combat over here. We didn't want to save the Darius or use a trick there, so Kaju now, this is kind of the time to act if you're the Annie player, I would think.
Yeah, this is a little bit hard for Kaju, as you can make the read that the hand of Silent is full of battle tricks, as again opting to play Draven from champion unit, just hard player Rengar. Does not feel good.
Yep, so the +3 again coming in from the spinning axe. Draven going to be all the way up to 9 power. So even with the 4 damage dealt to him from the Void Seeker, the Kai'Sa's not going to be able to do enough damage back in this combat as it currently stands to be able to even make an even trade here. So Draven again going to conquer. Gonna get that gold, gonna get that card draw up to 3 points. The Targon's ability as well, so we're gonna be able to keep leveraging the number of cards that we have in hand. And just dropping down some more guys into the base to do some more damage next turn as a treasure hunter, like you mentioned. And we're gonna ready those 2 runes from Targons.
Yeah, this is not a good spot for Annie. You got off to a fast start. Obviously, you missed the Arena's Greatest trigger, which is really coming to hurt here, as you are now on odd points. Want to be on even as Annie, but it doesn't even look like it matters. Like, Draven's got full board control. We have a unit set up for next turn. Annie has had to... both players have recycled runes somewhat aggressively, but, I mean, really want to be on more than 6, because this is essentially, you can accelerate 1. And your only option for Accelerate 2 is like Vi Ride the Wind, which feels bad to use this early, and I don't even think you have enough to... you can boost her up to +6, so you can go to 9 and try and go 9 over both, but it still feels pretty bad, especially with 2 up, because you still have to deal with the fighter flights, the rebukes.
And depending on the order of what you play, hard bargain, also something you have to consider at this point. So if you wanted to buy Ride the Wind, that's going to be potentially all you can do if we're playing around hard bargain. Fight or flight, obviously a disaster. Rebuke would be a disaster in that case, but it looks like it's going to be a Darius coming down in the base. Do we have a second spell to play to have him ready and get +2 power? If not, that's going to be 5 points that Silent's going to go into his turn with. And, it looks like the Drake. Okay, we got the cleave. Here it is. So we do have a cleave. And, ooh, the fighter flight is just brutal here.
That's a bit unfortunate for Kaju, though. I was going to say, I wouldn't hate just playing the Darius and passing and saying, okay, I'm building up my board a little bit again this turn. It sucks that I don't get a conquer. And then it at least lets you go into the next turn with 7 runes to actually work with plus a unit. Because if you do end up losing the combat there because there's, I don't know, you get rebuked or something, then you would be in a spot where you just don't have a board and you essentially passed and then you lose on the spot. So I wouldn't be super unhappy with this outcome, like the fight or flight back, as it kind of does play out in a similar way. Obviously, you did use a card from your hand for free with the cleave, but whatever. Looks like he forgot his Annie legend again.
So we're gonna possibly a little bit of a tilt play there. I've been there before where you just things aren't really growing right, and nope, there they are. It's just might have just been a little bit of lag, I think, is possibly the case. You never know. You just say, hey, sorry, I was lagging, I untapped these.
Yeah, something like that. But good spot here for Draven. I wouldn't hate a double retreat, to be honest. But I mean, you don't have to. Like, you're in a
Yeah.
pretty commanding position here. You could go like push up Treasure Hunter onto one, retreat back, play like Overzealous onto a battlefield. Like, there are a lot of good options here. Yep, so looking like he is going to move up the Treasure Hunter, probably pull back the Draven.
Yeah, the Draven Axe, by the way, has temporary, but since it's still attached to the Draven, it's not going away. So it's kind of an interesting way of temporary working with these new gear. It's not something like the Sprite Mother where it is temporary, it doesn't matter what you do, it's going away. So that thing sticking around for more than one turn is also just pretty backbreaking. A permanent 3 power on a unit is just, and especially at the rate that you get to, you very, very little investment from the Draven side.
Yeah, it's a pretty high value card if it does stick around. You really do hate seeing it stick around if you're playing against it as a. You do have to pay a power, but like we were talking about earlier, Treasure Hunter makes things free. Red Draven makes things free, and you end up just playing 2 energy, and you're like, okay, sure, that's fine. 2 energy for +3 permanently. Like, I'm totally fine with that.
So staring down the Darius and base, we're just gonna have the Treasure Hunter holding it down over at the Targon's Peak with a hidden card as well. So potential way to protect this from an incoming attack, which could result in a hold going to 6 points. Again, that even number, pretty big. So what would look normally like a pretty easy take here for the Darius is just now threatened by this hidden card. And I think Kujo just doesn't have an option at this point. We just have to shove in and kind of hope it wasn't fight or flight, but here it is. And looks like for a second turn in a row.
I would be pretty happy this is fight or flight, because I was actually making the read that this is switcheroo, as if it
we don't have the double purple though. The gold's exhausted. Oh, for the hidden side of it, the hidden switcheroo. God, of course,
yes. So I was making the read that was the hidden switcheroo, as you would have protecting your Treasure Hunter with a fight or flight doesn't really seem super real to me, but obviously it did force out a Rengar here, which you don't hate. I will say this scenario kind of sucks. Like, this is kind of the worst way this could get played out, because now if he does have another card to play, the Darius unreadies or re-readies, and now he does get a double conquer, which is, like, again, why I didn't really like the idea of it being fight or flight. Like, I feel like I wouldn't even play it if it was a fight or flight. I would just say, okay, whatever. But someone obviously had something up his sleeve.
Yeah, could just be that Silent's just looking for him to just expend whatever potential resources he has in his hand that, maybe it's a little awkward to play with this Darius here. I think it was, using the fight or flight, not great, but losing the Treasure Hunter, certainly not the end of the world. We have so much might sitting in our base. So forcing the Annie player here to potentially have to double conquer, and then is only going to be 2 runes left. I didn't see what they got back with the Annie champion trigger from their discard.
So she will have 4 and added back the Void Seeker, because you do get the Targons plus the
only
Annie.
going to have 2 runes to work with. It looks like it was Void Seeker. Is that correct?
4 runes to work with. There was a Targons.
Could that even be right?
So, yep, going back to Draven. Would not be surprised here if is able to double conquer. All you have to really worry about is that Void Seeker, and there is a Darius immediately coming down.
Just how are we playing that Void Seeker?
Well, I imagine the way they would like to see it is just like hold it and then use it to conquer on like an Overzealous, because Silent isn't winning here on the turn. Right. Maybe expecting to have like a fight or flight or something. We still haven't seen a Ride the Wind this game from Silent, so that's still something you do need to be a little bit worried about. As Ride the Wind pretty powerful with the Draven unit, obviously, as you do get essentially 2 +2 for each combat. Get the double attacking trigger and then a draw 2. And okay, so Ride the Wind from the Annie deck, pulling back using the Ride the Wind to save the Darius. Okay, that's not a use I see very often.
Yeah, typically when you see that sort of play, it's maybe a fight or flight. Usually a little better for playing, or flash even, for that kind of defensive play. But yeah, Ride the Winding your Darius back to your base. Not really a winning play all the time, but I think at this point for Kaju, he really just needs to have his board ready next turn to be able to clear, at this point now, both of these bases, since Silent has now gone to 7 points.
Mm-hmm.
I'm saying bases and battlefields. Battlefields. Two battlefields that we've got to hold. It's the Darius and the base. And we never played a second spell this turn, or any second card this turn, so not that really Darius needed to do too much work in here to go in and conquer either of these battlefields.
Yeah, Darius was there for moral support.
They're speaking of moral support. This is the real moral support right here. You have the overzealous fan. He's coming in to give Draven a high five. He wants an autograph. And Darius is also just going to join the party over there. Why not? You know, he's just really going for the double hold turn here. Having 3 up as well, 6 cards, you have to think that Silent has at least one piece of interaction here some way. So even if the shields were down completely for Silent, this turn is going to be really difficult for Kaju.
The way that Silent pushed everything up onto arenas makes me think that there is a rebuke or a fight or flight in the hand, as otherwise I would be very happily just pulling everything, keeping everything in base and making a push up, because we do know there is a Void Seeker to take care of the overzealous. Though if you do Void Seeker, you probably don't actually have enough runes to really do anything besides like maybe a Darius Ride the Wind. This arena's greatest mistrigger is really hurting here, because this would be potentially the match turn, or sorry, game turn for Kaju if he did have 6 points.
Yep, changes the entire landscape of the game with one more point there. For a couple of turns, being able to kind of set up, and now Silent knows he could play a little bit more aggressively here, since he knows there isn't a way for him to go from 5 to 8 in this single turn. You know, no Tryndamere up the sleeve or anything like that from the Annie deck. So Kaju's in the tank here a bit, seeing if there might be a way to maneuver around this. Like you said, we know about the Void Seeker that was picked up from the Annie, but I think there might just be too many things to try to deal with here. Maybe some combination of Cleave, Ride the Wind could be a way to deal, but then again, we would also need to be dealing with the overzealous fan. So yeah, it's just kind of
the overzealous fan makes this a little bit rough. You'd need, let me see, so we have 6. If you do have like a hard bargain for a fight or flight or something, then it would be like, oh, okay. That is none of the options I was thinking of.
Yeah, looks like you say Traveling Merchant, that resolves. No problems with that. So yeah, Traveling Merchant, I don't think is part of any winning or not losing line here. But we're gonna have to see here. We're gonna give Kaju his flowers. Oh no, looks like we're gonna see some little celebration emojis. Darius coming in, clearing out the Rengar. Get out of my top lane.
You have to get over what, 12? Because I was thinking it would be like conquer with Darius, play ride, push up Annie.
Could be Gust, the overzealous fan potentially. Gust, I believe, has had a pretty. Oh, and here we just see anyway. Well. So yeah. We're just going to show him the counter spell for the Void Seeker anyway. Darius is going to do a little wiggle. We're going to see some more emotes there. And Silent Knight is going to take this matchup 2-0, and I believe is just all but, depending on tiebreakers, locked up his spot in the top 4. So for those that may be looking and are deciding if you want to play Annie or Draven, I will say Draven looked very, very impressive in this matchup.